In a noisy world, God often speaks in whispers. Stillness becomes the doorway to hearing Him. Silence is not empty when it's filled with His presence. It's sacred space where clarity is born. In today's world, everything around us shouts for our attention. The constant buzzing of notifications, the endless stream of voices and opinions, the never-ending noise of modern life. It all competes for our focus, our energy, and our hearts. And yet in the midst of all this noise, there exists a deeper truth. The most important messages in life are rarely shouted. They are whispered. They are subtle. They are found not in the chaos, but in the quiet. In a noisy world, God often speaks in whispers. If we never stop to listen, if we never allow stillness to enter our lives, we risk missing the very voice that guides us, strengthens us, and reminds us of who we truly are. Silence is not emptiness. True silence is sacred space. It is the place where your heart begins to align with something far greater than yourself. It is the doorway to clarity, wisdom, and strength. In silence, you don't lose yourself, you discover yourself. You don't fall into nothingness. You fall into presence, into awareness, into connection with the divine. When was the last time you sat in complete stillness? Without distraction, without rushing, without the urge to check your phone, turn on the TV, or fill the air with noise. For many people, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels strange, even threatening. Because in silence, we are left with our thoughts, our fears, and the truths we've been avoiding. But here's the paradox. It is only by walking through that initial discomfort that we find peace on the other side. Silence is not a void, it is a vessel. It is filled with meaning, guidance, and clarity. If only we dare to listen. Think about it. Every time you've had a breakthrough in your life, every time you've experienced deep clarity, it wasn't during the noise. It was often in moments of stillness. Maybe it was a walk in nature. Maybe it was lying under the stars. Maybe it was sitting quietly before sleep, when the world slowed down just enough for you to hear that gentle voice inside, that whisper that says, keep going. That whisper that says, you are not alone. That whisper that says, this is the way. We often imagine divine communication as thunder and lightning, as grand and dramatic. But in reality, the voice of God, the voice of truth, the voice of wisdom, is subtle. It doesn't force itself into your life. It waits for you to be ready, to be still enough to hear. In the rush of noise, you'll miss it. But in the quiet, it becomes clear. Why does God whisper? Why doesn't the voice of truth shout louder than everything else? Because whispers require closeness. A whisper means you must lean in. You must pay attention. You must choose to listen. A whisper is not heard by accident. It is heard by intention. And that is the essence of spiritual growth. Intention. Choosing to pause. Choosing to listen. Choosing to seek. The noisy world tells you to always be busy, always be productive, always chase after the next thing. But the whisper reminds you that you are more than what you do. The whisper tells you that worth is not earned, it's inherent. The whisper tells you that love, peace, and clarity are not found in constant striving, but in surrendering to stillness. Silence becomes the doorway to hearing God, because silence removes the clutter. Imagine trying to tune into your favorite radio station while static fills the air. That's what life feels like when we never stop. We're tuned to the wrong frequency. But when you slow down, when you quiet your mind, You begin to hear the clear signal, the message that was always there but drowned out by noise. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You are reminded that you are not alone. You begin to sense a presence greater than yourself. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it the source of all life. It doesn't matter what name you give it. What matters is that in stillness you experience connection. You feel the sacred, and when you feel that sacred presence, everything else begins to fall into perspective. The stress, the confusion, the doubts, they lose their grip on you. Many people fear silence because they think it's empty, but silence is never empty. Silence is alive. Silence is where creativity is born, where breakthroughs happen, where wounds begin to heal. Silence is the soil in which the seeds of wisdom grow. Without silence, without reflection, life becomes shallow and reactive. But with silence, life gains depth, meaning, and direction. Think about a musician. Music is not just sound, it is also silence. Without pauses, without rests, music would just be noise. It is the spaces between the notes that give the melody its beauty. Life is the same. Without silence, without pauses, life becomes chaotic and overwhelming. But when you create space for stillness, you allow the melody of your life to emerge clearly. And silence does not mean passivity. It does not mean doing nothing. In fact, silence strengthens action. It gives you clarity, direction, and peace. When your decisions are born out of stillness, they are wiser, steadier, and more aligned with truth. When your strength comes from silence, it becomes unshakable. The world will try to convince you that power comes from loudness, from dominance, from shouting the hardest. But real power is quiet. Real strength doesn't need to prove itself. A mountain does not shout, yet it stands immovable. The ocean does not scream, yet its power is endless. In the same way, the whisper of God, the whisper of truth, holds more power than all the noise of the world. So how do we find this silence? How do we enter this sacred space where clarity is born? It begins with intention. It begins with a choice. You don't need a temple, a church, or a mountain retreat. You simply need a moment where you put everything else aside and just breathe. A moment where you sit in stillness and allow yourself to listen. At first, you may hear nothing but noise, your own racing thoughts, your worries, your to-do lists. But if you stay long enough, if you wait patiently, something shifts. The noise settles. The surface of your mind, once turbulent, becomes calm like still water. And in that still water, reflections appear clearly. The whisper becomes audible. The presence becomes real. This is why silence is sacred. Because in silence, you meet the truth that has always been within you and beyond you. You discover that you are deeply connected, deeply loved, and deeply guided. Silence reveals that you don't have to have all the answers, because the answers come when you listen. In silence, clarity is born. The decisions that seemed impossible begin to feel manageable. The confusion that felt overwhelming begins to dissolve. The fears that kept you paralyzed lose their power, because silence reminds you that you are not walking through life alone. The noisy world will always be there. The distractions, the demands, the endless voices, they won't disappear. But you have a choice. You can choose to step away from the noise, even for a few minutes a day, and enter the sacred space of silence. And in that silence, you will find strength, wisdom, and peace that the world cannot give you. Let this truth sink in. Silence is not wasted time. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is sacred space. It is where God whispers to your heart. It is where clarity is born. It is where your soul is renewed. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, the next time you feel lost, the next time the world feels too loud, don't run further into the noise. Instead, stop, be still, listen. Because in a noisy world, God often speaks in whispers, and that whisper has the power to change everything.